ask questions.
Well, what would exclude you from buying it as far as health, your health?
Remember what the insurance company's betting on here. Most life insurance, they're betting on when you're gonna die. Here, they're betting on you're gonna live. And you're gonna live and need care. And so, history as far as Alzheimer's in the family, any kind of dementia in the family, any pre-existing medical condition that you may have already had that would lead to some extended care. And so their risk, if you think about it, is that they're gonna be stuck paying your nursing home bill for whatever that, or in-home or whatever it may be.
So let's say you have it, and your time expires, and you got it for 3 years, whatever, and you go to renew it. Are you planning on goes to renew it for you? But since you're already in the nursing home paying the long-term care, can you renew it with it?
Usually the way the policy works is you buy the policy, and then once you enter, it triggers, your premiums stop, and it triggers payout on the policy. That's the way it typically works. And it will pay for whatever that time period is, whether that's going to be 3 years or life or whatever it is. I was going to say, y'all already got nervous, because I was going to say, if you don't ask questions, I'm going to start telling jokes. You must have already heard my jokes. What?
The partnership program?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's a partnership program in Oklahoma dealing with Medicaid. This will kind of tie into Medicaid, where if you buy long-term care insurance, you're allowed to take the same amount of assets and set them aside as being protected assets and qualify for Medicaid. It's to encourage the purchase of long-term care insurance. It's something that's brand new. It's federally legislated. It came in 2006. But they've just started to get the regs down. So as for instance, let's say you buy coverage of $100,000. Well, then you can take $100,000 of assets and set those aside. If for some reason your policy fully pays out and you need Medicaid benefits and you still have $100,000 of property or assets, whatever it is, you'll still qualify. And so it's a brand new program. In fact, we have just started filing applications for Medicaid under that partnership program. And we just filed a handful at this point. So I called VHS the other day and I said, I've got a question for you. We typically deal with legal counsel down in Oklahoma City. So I've got a question for you. I've got this partnership thing. And I said, how am I supposed to file that? And they said, we don't really know. That's the first application we got. We haven't had it yet. And so they're just starting to see what's coming in. It's called the partnership program. It's actually through the insurance commissioner. And if you go on the insurance commissioner's website, is that where it's located at?
Yes, or you can go to Google and type in Oklahoma Long-Term Care Partnership Program.
And because there's a list of providers,
Huh?
and the reason you need to pay attention to the list is because, and generally they're the mainstream providers. But if you buy a long-term care policy, you may want to factor that into who you buy it from as well, as far as being the provider. Because if you buy it from one of them, you can set assets aside as being protected. Other questions? That's what happens a lot of times. A lot of times it's denied. Now, what about veterans benefits? The thing that we run into with VA benefits, some people think, number one, I have to be the one that served, which isn't the case. And secondly, I have to be in a VA facility, which isn't the case. We have never qualified anybody for this VA benefit that has been in a VA facility. They all live, several of them are in the commons here, some are at home. You don't have to be in a nursing facility. But what it is, it's called aid and attendance. Yeah, don't you like the you have to serve at least 90 days active duty. You've got to have 90, the veteran does. Now that's either the veteran, and then if we can apply for surviving widow or widow benefits, surviving spouse. Has to be at least 1 day during active wartime. Now the thing you got to be a little careful of is when they define wartime to the VA is different than the wartime to us. For instance, the Gulf War is still going on, according to the VA. Most of us would agree that's probably over with. But according to the VA, that's still an active war. And so what you'll find, and that information is on the website as well, there are defined dates for what the war times are. And they extend usually a little before the war and a little after what the actual war is. And you have to be discharged in a way other than dishonorably. Either it could be honorable, it could be medical hardship, whatever it is. And then the fourth is Medicaid. Medicaid benefits. And very similar to tax planning. It's paid by your FICA and self-employment tax. One of the history behind Medicaid, a lot of people don't realize, we got that in the early 1900s. Back when FDR was president, that's when we saw the advent of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, like back then, like today, when we get a new government program, what's the first concern? How you pay for it. How are we going to pay for it? So that was the same concern they had. And so the way they solved that, they said, well, we have income tax, but let's add what they call the FICA, and let's add self-employment tax. And that's specifically earmarked when you pay that to pay for your Social Security benefits, your Medicare benefits, and your Medicaid benefit. Clients that have qualified for this, we see net worths between $5 million and $3 million. Or I'm sorry, $50,000 up to $3 million. We'll talk a little bit in just a minute about how that works. Questions at this point? When people come in and they talk, they say, okay, I'm here to talk about estate planning. Well, what's estate planning? And, well, here's the analysis we typically call that we go through. First of all, this is the first question I ask. Are you concerned about long-term care costs? If the answer to that is no, they're not, then my next question is, do you want to avoid probate? If the answer to that is no, they don't care, we're looking to avoid it. So when you look and you think of the different options, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to set this in perspective so that you know where you are. So if you have a will, you know that there's no concern about long-term care costs, there's no protection, and there's no protection from probate. Sometimes people come in and they say, well, I've got a will, therefore I don't have to probate. No, you have to probate that document. It has to be probate. If we're concerned about probate, we'll have an estate planning trust. Now that's the typical trust that you see most of the time. Some people call it revocable, some people call it living, some people call it loving. When I first started practicing law, I didn't know any of those terms. I was kind of like, well, we got a loving trust, we got a living trust, we got a revocable trust, and what are all these different types of trusts? And then there was one I thought was really good. It was a revocable, living, loving, and revivalist trust. It had all 4 names on it. It had to be good. Well, then I finally realized that they're all the same thing. You know, they're just different names for that. And they're really, people will come in and they'll say, well, I've got a trust, I'm protected. And we have the unfortunate task of explaining them what they're protected from. We do believe they're good mechanisms to avoid probate. And this is sufficient if we have maybe long-term care insurance or if they've made a decision to self-fund their care. That's all they need. They don't need anything else.